My hands shook so violently that I had to slam my palms flat against the cold desk just to stop the trembling. I stared at the screen as my breathing stopped. My name, the name of the sole creator who spent years writing every line of this system, had been completely erased. In its place was my father's name. Then came his voice from the cracked conference door, drifting down the dark hallway. He wasn't speaking with his usual warmth. He was laughing. "She's just a foundling from an orphanage," he scoffed to the board members. "She doesn't have the genius to build this legacy. The multi-million-dollar deal belongs to me, not her." The tears burned my face, but I didn't make a sound. I quietly closed my laptop with a soft click. My identity was gone, but they forgot one thing. I still held the master key to the entire system, and I was about to walk onto that presentation stage. What do you think I did when the camera started flashing? Hit that subscribe button right now to see how I destroyed their dream in front of the entire world. My name is Victoria Smith. At 26 years old, my entire existence was neatly organized into logical structures, flawless lines of code, and an absolute, unshakable loyalty to the man I proudly called my father, Richard Smith. As the lead software engineer and data architect at Smith Tech, our family-owned startup nestled in the tech hub of Austin, Texas, I truly believed that every single night spent hunched over my glowing monitor was a brick laid toward building our shared future. I have never been the type of person who speaks loudly, demands attention, or pushes to stand in the spotlight. I always preferred to let my dedication and the quiet excellence of my work speak for me, naively trusting that my absolute devotion would be recognized by the people who mattered most in my life. For as long as I could remember, our household was the very definition of suburban harmony and emotional stability. It had been just my father and me against the rest of the world for more than 2 decades. Our daily routine was deeply comforting and structured around mutual affection. Every single morning began exactly the same way, with the rich, inviting aroma of hazelnut coffee he brewed for us, followed by enthusiastic, smiling breakfast table, debates about emerging technology, digital infrastructure, and the future of global cybersecurity. We lived in a beautiful, sunlit mid-century modern house surrounded by tall oak trees, a place that felt less like a simple building and more like a safe sanctuary from the chaotic world outside. While we were certainly not billionaires or prominent high society figures, our economic standing was comfortable, respectable, and stable, built entirely on the modest but steady success of Smith Tech. We enjoyed weekend barbecues on the backyard deck, shared quiet dinners discussing our favorite books, and celebrated small victories with genuine laughter. To absolutely anyone watching our lives unfold from the outside, we were the perfect tight-knit team, bound together by an unbreakable thread of mutual respect, deep familial love, and a grand shared dream for the future of our company. I went to sleep every single night, feeling incredibly blessed, completely secure in my identity as a cherished daughter, and excited for the bright future we were building side by side. I poured my mind, my energy, and my youth into the company's servers, thinking that a father's love was as unconditional as the laws of mathematics. Our daily life was filled with a warm rhythm where work and home blended seamlessly into a joyful partnership. Richard would often boast to our neighbors about my sharp analytical mind, and I would smile, feeling a deep sense of pride that I could help expand the legacy of the man who had given me everything. I knew every corner of our comfortable home, from the dusty tech journals in the study to the worn-out couch where we watched sci-fi movies together. My position at Smith Tech was not just a job handed to me out of pity. It was a role I earned through merit, working 16-hour days to ensure our family business remained competitive against the massive conglomerates in Silicon Valley. I truly believed that the foundation of our lives was solid, built on a lifetime of trust, shared hardships, and an honest bond that no amount of money could ever change or diminish. Life moved forward with a beautiful, predictable rhythm that reinforced this comforting belief every single day. My waking hours were consumed by a quiet, burning passion as I put the final, meticulous touches on Aegis, a groundbreaking cybersecurity algorithm that I had spent the last 3 years building completely from scratch. Smith Tech had been struggling financially due to shifting market demands, and I knew deep down that Aegis was the ultimate lifeline our family business needed to survive. My greatest dream was never about achieving personal fame, seeing my face on tech magazine covers, or accumulating independent wealth. It was the simple, profound hope of handing my father the keys to a global technological legacy, proving to him that his years of love and trust in me had been fully earned. Every single interaction with my father during this intense development phase was wrapped in immense warmth and support. He was my biggest cheerleader, the one who kept me grounded when the coding sequences became overwhelmingly complex. He would often walk softly into my home office late at night, carefully placing a warm mug of chamomile tea right next to my keyboard, gently tapping my shoulder with a proud, sweeping smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "You are changing the game entirely, Victoria," he would say in a soft, reverent whisper, looking at the glowing lines of code reflecting in my eyes. "The whole world is going to know what a brilliant mind you have, and we are going to celebrate this together as a family." Those words were my fuel, pushing me through exhaustion. But just as the horizon looked completely clear and our future seemed brighter than ever, the very first microscopic shadow crept into our peaceful, harmonious world. It was a crisp Tuesday afternoon when I walked down the main hallway of the Smith Tech corporate building to deliver a vital server status report directly to him. As I approached his office, I stopped in my tracks. For the first time in the entire history of our company, the heavy mahogany door was firmly locked from the inside. Through the thick, frosted glass panels, I could see the dark silhouettes of several unfamiliar men and hear the muffled, intense murmurs of corporate lawyers speaking in hushed tones. It was a tiny, highly unusual detail, a faint, icy ripple in our otherwise calm and transparent waters. When the door finally opened an hour later, my father simply smiled warmly, patted my arm and brushed it off as routine tax paperwork that required absolute privacy. I forced myself to smile back, hiding the sudden, inexplicable chill that had just brushed against my spine. The true turning point arrived just a few weeks later with a sudden, overwhelming wave that disrupted our quiet routine completely. Out of nowhere, a massive Silicon Valley technology conglomerate caught wind of the incredible capabilities of Aegis and extended a life-changing $4 million buyout offer to our company. This sensational news should have brought ecstatic shouts of joy echoing through our hallways, but instead, an eerie, heavy, and suffocating silence descended upon my father's executive office. The entire atmosphere inside Smith Tech shifted instantly from a collaborative, warm family environment to something cold, bureaucratic, and highly secretive. The first real chill from Richard came later that very week during a casual afternoon briefing. He looked at me not with the proud eyes of a father, but with the calculating gaze of a fierce corporate competitor. I needed to update the final deployment log for our system integration, so I sat at my station and logged into the company's secure master database, using my primary administrator credentials. There, sitting quietly in the pending verification file, was the revised patent application for Aegis, ready to be transmitted to the representatives of the buyout firm. My breath caught sharply in my throat, and the room felt instantly devoid of oxygen. My name, the name of the sole creator who had spent thousands of hours writing every single line of code from scratch, had been completely erased from the official documentation. In its place, Richard Smith was listed as the exclusive, solitary inventor of the technology. My hands began to tremble so violently that I had to physically press my palms flat against the hard surface of the desk to keep from shaking. Elena, my trusted colleague and dear friend from administration, walked past my desk and asked if I was feeling okay, noticing my sudden paleness. I could not bring myself to speak the truth aloud. I did not storm into his office demanding an explanation, nor did I cause a scene in front of our staff. Instead, keeping my true feelings masked, I quietly closed my laptop with a soft click, my heart hammering furiously against my ribs like a trapped bird as a dark, suffocating cloud of worry settled deep over my chest. I wanted to believe it was a mistake, an administrative error by the external legal team, but the cold pit in my stomach told me a much darker reality was beginning to unfold. The devastating truth finally broke through the surface on a rainy Thursday evening when the rest of the building had already emptied out. I had stayed late at the office under the pretense of double-checking the database server stability, but in reality, I was searching for any piece of data that could prove the patent omission was just a catastrophic clerical mistake. As I walked down the dim, shadowed hallway toward the break room to clear my racing thoughts, I heard voices echoing from the main executive conference room. The heavy mahogany door was slightly ajar, letting a sharp sliver of light cut across the carpeted floor. Peeking inside through the narrow opening, my heart shattered into a million unfixable pieces. I saw Richard standing confidently at the head of the long table, casually swirling a glass of water while speaking to 3 of our major corporate board members. He looked completely relaxed, wearing the same tailored suit he wore to our family dinners, but his posture was entirely different, dominant, cold, and calculating. "We need to ensure the incoming buyout funds flow directly into the primary family trust under my sole name," Richard said, his voice entirely devoid of the gentle, supportive warmth he always used at our breakfast table. One of the older board members shifted uncomfortably in his leather chair, clearing his throat before hesitatingly asking about my intellectual property rights and my role as the lead developer. Richard let out a soft, mocking laugh that cut through the silence of the empty office like shards of jagged ice. "Victoria, let's be realistic here, gentlemen," he scoffed, waving his hand dismissively. "She's just a foundling I took in from an orphanage out of charity when she was a child. She should be profoundly grateful she has a roof over her head, a prestigious last name, and a comfortable job. She doesn't possess the creative genius or the actual DNA to build something as complex as She merely did the repetitive typing under my guidance. The algorithm belongs entirely to the Smith name, not to her." I leaned heavily against the cold drywall of the hallway, my knees nearly giving way beneath me as tears silently streamed down my face. The world I had built my identity upon collapsed in an instant. The decades of warmth, the morning coffees, the proud smiles, the late-night tea, it had all been a beautifully orchestrated performance designed to keep me compliant and productive. Every sweet memory was instantly poisoned by the realization that I was never truly a daughter. I was just a highly profitable investment. I pulled myself away from the door, careful not to make a sound, as the realization set in that my life would never, ever be the same again. The deep, suffocating sadness inside me quickly hardened into a quiet, dignified resolve as I drove home through the pouring rain. I refused to allow my life's work, my intelligence, and my very identity to be stolen and dismissed as mere charity by a man who viewed me as a transaction. That very night, sitting alone in the dark of my home office while Richard slept peacefully down the hall, I opened the master framework of Aegis. With precise, deliberate keystrokes, I embedded a highly secure, hidden master key protocol deep within the core architecture of the software. It was a digital failsafe, a ghost in the machine that only my personal encryption key could untangle or remove. The next morning, I took my first concrete step toward protecting myself. I walked into the Smith Tech corporate building with my chin held high and requested an immediate, formal meeting with the internal legal counsel and the human resources director to present my original development logs, commit histories, and early system designs. But Richard was 10 steps ahead of me, possessing an uncanny corporate instinct. Before the scheduled meeting could even begin, I reached the glass turnstiles of the main lobby and scanned my corporate access card. It blinked a harsh, solid red. My professional email was completely deactivated on my phone, and my network permissions were frozen across every server. Richard walked out of the executive elevator, flanked by 2 burly corporate security guards who used to smile and greet me every morning. With a cold, unblinking stare that completely erased 26 years of shared history, he handed me a crisp white envelope containing a letter stating I was being placed on an immediate, forced administrative leave due to internal restructuring and security protocols. He did not look at me as a daughter. He looked at me as a threat that needed to be neutralized. Elena watched from the glass walls of the administrative office, her eyes wide with shock and helpless sympathy as the guards escorted me out of the building I had helped build. The pressure was suffocating, and the walls of my life were closing in rapidly. Refusing to back down or let my spirit be crushed by this cold betrayal, I spent the next 3 days pounding on the heavy doors of independent technology attorneys all across the city. I carried a thin folder of whatever sparse design notes I had left, practically begging for legal representation to halt the upcoming corporate buyout. But Richard's formidable influence and the immense, looming weight of the pending $4 million contract were simply too massive to overcome. Every single law firm I visited turned me down with a sympathetic but firm shake of the head. They stated that without the physical hard drives or the raw, unedited server logs which were currently locked deep inside Smith Tech's heavily guarded mainframe. It was merely my word against a powerful, wealthy chief executive officer who possessed the entire company's legal team. By late Sunday night, the harsh reality of my situation finally caught up with me. I was sitting cross-legged on the hardwood floor of my empty apartment, surrounded by rejected legal papers, unanswered emails, and a cold cup of coffee. For the first time in my life, I felt completely isolated, defeated, and utterly alone in the world. It felt like the bad guys were inevitably going to win, and there was absolutely nothing my logical mind could do to stop it. Desperate for any kind of comfort or distraction from the racing thoughts in my head, I began sorting through an old, dusk-covered jewelry box that my late adoptive mother had given me many years ago. As I turned the velvet-lined box over in my hands, my fingers brushed against a tiny, hidden release mechanism at the very bottom. With a soft click, a secret compartment popped open. Inside lay a small, dusty, metallic object that made my heart skip a beat. It was an off-network, heavily encrypted backup flash drive I had used during the very first year of developing Aegis, completely separate from the company network. It contained the raw, unedited initial codebase, with my original digital times. A tiny, brilliant ray of hope flared up in the deep darkness of my despair. I didn't have access to the building, but I now held the definitive proof of my creation right in the palm of my hand. I squeezed the cold metal tightly, knowing exactly what I had to do next as the clock ticked closer to the final showdown, leading directly to the moment when the Grand Tech Keynote Gala arrived. The grand ballroom of the luxury downtown hotel was filled to capacity with international investors, tech journalists, and flashing cameras. The stage was beautifully lit, dominating the room. At the center of the stage stood a pristine glass podium where the historic $4 million buyout contract sat, waiting to be signed. This deal would seal Richard's status as a tech visionary forever, completely built on my stolen brilliance. I arrived at the venue dressed in an elegant, sharp black blazer, my posture upright and dignified. As I reached the entrance of the ballroom, 2 large security guards stepped in front of me, blocking my path. Richard had anticipated my arrival and blacklisted my invitation. From the stage, Richard looked out into the crowd, locking eyes with me near the back entrance. He offered a smug, victorious smile before turning to the microphone, publicly praising the power of family legacy and the innovation of the Smith name. The crowd erupted into applause. Every legal and traditional channel had failed me. The tension in my chest was at an all-time high. I was backed into a corner with only one incredibly risky, definitive move left to make. Standing there at the threshold of my own destruction, I felt the sheer weight of the $4 million crushing down on everything I had ever believed in. The murmurs of the elite crowd blended into a terrifying hum of wealthy indifference, all of them prepared to applaud a lie while the true creator stood locked outside in the dark. Richard looked so grand under those bright lights, the perfect picture of a self-made patriarch, soaking in the adulation that belonged to my silent, midnight hours of labor. The contract on the glass podium seemed to gleam like polished ice, representing the absolute finality of my erasure from history. My heart was hammering against my ribs so violently it felt like a physical pain, and for a fleeting, terrifying second, the urge to simply turn around and walk away into the quiet Texas night almost consumed me. I felt the familiar sting of tears pricking behind my eyelids, threatening to break my carefully composed exterior. But as I looked at Richard's cold, self-satisfied smile across the expanse of the room, something deep inside me snapped into place. The decades of seeking his validation, the years of quiet compliance, and the paralyzing fear of being left truly alone vanished, replaced by an unshakable, roaring clarity. I was Victoria Smith, the sole architect of Aegis, and I would not allow my existence to be negotiated away for a corporate check. I took one long, steadying breath, letting the cool air steady my trembling hands as I reached into my blazer pocket to feel the solid, reassuring edge of the backup drive. The stage was set for my absolute ruin, but they had forgotten that I was the one who controlled the blueprint of the entire system. With a calm, deliberate step, I backed away from the main doors, slipping unnoticed into the shadows of the service corridor, ready to execute the only move I had left. I didn't make a loud scene at the entrance, nor did I waste time arguing with the security guards who were simply following orders. Instead, I quietly navigated the dim maze of the back hallways until I reached the technical control booth situated at the far side of the massive ballroom. The room was humming with server racks and monitoring equipment, the heart of the entire gala's digital broadcast. The technician inside was completely distracted, adjusting audio levels while watching the live feed of Richard on the monitor. Recognizing me immediately as the brilliant lead engineer of Smith Tech, he didn't question my presence or my sudden entry into the restricted zone. Moving with practiced, lightning-fast precision, I stepped past him and inserted my old metallic backup flash drive directly into the main master terminal. I executed a customized script I had written in my apartment, a digital key that effortlessly bypassed the venue's local security firewalls and established a direct override connection to the live presentation feed. Suddenly, the massive projection screens stretching across the stage behind Richard flickered violently and went completely dark. A single second later, they illuminated the entire ballroom with the raw, undeniable core architecture of Aegis. The screens began scrolling through thousands of lines of code, flashing my original creation timestamps, my personal digital signature, and the definitive ownership logs for the entire world to see. The booming voice of the announcer cut out, and the grand ballroom fell into a stunned, breathless, and absolute silence. With a calm, unshakable dignity that radiated from every fiber of my being, I walked out of the technical booth, bypassed the frozen security guards, and stepped directly onto the brightly lit stage. Richard's face drained of all color, turning a ghostly white as the flashing cameras of the international press instantly turned away from him and focused entirely on me. I walked right up to the glass podium, my heels clicking sharply against the stage floor, and looked my adoptive father dead in his cold, terrified eyes. "You told the board members and the world that I was just a foundling who merely did the repetitive typing," I said, my voice ringing out with crystal clarity through the main microphone, echoing into every corner of the silent room. "But you forgot that without the architect, the house falls apart completely." With a single, powerful, and deliberate motion on my smartphone, I triggered the master key command, executing the failsafe that permanently wiped the proprietary code from Smith Tech's corporate servers forever. Then, right under the dazzling, blinding lights of the international press, I picked up the physical $4 million buyout contract from the podium, tore it completely in half with a crisp, Definity rip-dropped the useless pieces of paper directly at his feet, and walked off the stage into the crowd with my head held high. The fallout from that historic night was instantaneous, sending massive shockwaves through the entire technological community. With the proprietary source code of Aegis completely erased from the corporate database and the undeniable public exposure of intellectual property theft, the Silicon Valley conglomerate wasted no time. Before the sun even rose the next morning, they officially withdrew their $4 million buyout offer, releasing a stinging public statement that they would never do business with a company built on deception. The widespread public scandal and the sudden loss of the deal left Smith Tech in absolute ruin. To save what little remained of the company's damaged reputation, the board of directors acted swiftly and without mercy. They held an emergency session and voted unanimously to strip Richard Smith of his title, removing him permanently from his position as Chief Executive Officer. Without my brilliant engineering mind and without the crown jewel algorithm, the company was forced to completely restructure under new, highly ethical, independent management. Richard was left entirely powerless, holding nothing but an empty, ruined shell of a business. He faced no physical harm, no dramatic shouting matches, and no immediate legal charges, but he was forced to endure the ultimate consequence, being completely stripped of the unearned status, wealth, and prestige he had prized above his own family. For me, however, a magnificent and breathtaking new door swung wide open to the world. I received countless messages of solidarity from engineers worldwide who had faced similar corporate erasure. Elena immediately resigned from her position to stand by my side, helping me navigate the overwhelming influx of attention. Instead of trying to recreate the algorithm to sell it to another greedy, faceless tech corporation for personal gain, Primera made a life-changing decision. I officially released the foundational core framework of Aegis as an open-source cybersecurity tool, making it completely free and accessible for independent developers, grassroots community projects, and struggling nonprofits across the globe. The global tech industry showered me with immense, profound respect for my bravery, integrity, and unparalleled skill. I was no longer a hidden shadow operating behind a manipulative patriarch. I was a recognized pioneer, Within a matter of mere weeks, my personal inbox was absolutely flooded with prestigious, highly lucrative job offers from ethical, global technology firms that wanted me to lead their research departments. They didn't see me as a charity case or a foundling who merely did the typing. They valued me for exactly who I was, a brilliant self-made creator with an unshakable moral compass. I finally had the freedom to choose my own path, knowing that my future was secure, bright, and built on the solid bedrock of truth. Looking back on my turbulent journey while sitting on the sunny, peaceful deck of my new apartment overlooking the vibrant Austin skyline, I realized that the painful storm I went through was completely necessary to clear the path ahead. For 26 years, I lived in a carefully constructed illusion, mistakenly believing that my worth as a human being was defined by the last name I carried, the genetic bloodline I lacked, or the conditional validation of a man who ultimately viewed our entire relationship as a corporate transaction. But through the fire of betrayal, I discovered a truth that no one can ever take away from me. I learned that your true value never comes with a $4 million price tag, a fancy corporate title, or the hollow approval of those who seek to diminish your brilliance just to elevate themselves. True belonging is something you build within yourself, rooted deeply in your own self-respect, your unwavering integrity, and the quiet courage to stand up and protect your own mind. I am finagi, completely free. I am no longer fighting to be seen in a house that was designed to keep me hidden in the shadows. Today, I am creating a technological and personal legacy that is entirely my own, surrounded by a wonderful community of chosen family and colleagues who value me for my heart, my ethics, and my intellect. The journey was heartbreaking, but walking away from a toxic lie was the first step toward walking into my true purpose. Thank you so much for opening your hearts and walking through this deeply emotional, dramatic journey side by side with me. Your support has been the light that kept me moving forward through the darkest code. What do you think was the most powerful moment of Victoria's journey to reclaim her identity? Do you think she made the right choice by tearing up the contract and open sourcing her life's work instead of taking the money? Let me know your inspiring thoughts and perspectives in the comments section below. If this story touched your heart and reminded you of your own worth, please hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it today, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more powerful, dramatic, and deeply inspiring stories.